IP, which relates, for example, to royalties that are paid for brands by investors on each side of the Atlantic here. I would also want to highlight the very important investments that the EU has in the Mercosur region. We invest about 400 billion euros. It's a stock. I shouldn't compare this with a flow, but it gives an order of magnitude of what we are talking about. We have invested as much as EU member states' economies produce in 1 year. If you look at the Portuguese economy or the Czech economy, the Finnish economy, we actually invest more in Mercosur. We invest a lot in areas such as automobile, machinery, or the pharmaceutical, and a lot of this trade is indeed also located in Brazil and Argentina. The agreement can bring more opportunities to develop this trade and these investment flows. The structure of the agreement, I just wanted to highlight, the negotiations have started a few decades ago, but the structure of the agreement corresponds to areas that we cover in modern agreements. So you see that there is a chapter that deals specifically with trade and investment or trade and establishment, which is actually providing a good outcome, a very good outcome indeed. And it's good news for our companies, for our investors, because thanks to this agreement in our relations with Mercosur, we will be providing them with legal certainty. Mercosur partners have committed their current level of openness to EU companies. This is the main gain. We also increase transparency. This is the second main gain. And we reduced, also very important, we reduce or eliminate, in many cases, the discrimination between EU investors and local Mercosur investors. And this is indeed quite important for our operators. The agreement covers a broad scope of services in the areas where also the EU has a lot of offensive interest: financial, postal, telecommunication, transport, also environmental services. But it also covers, and it actually adds additional disciplines than what we can rely on in the WTO, which are disciplines regarding investments, for example, in what we call non-services sectors, the manufacturing, agriculture, and production of electricity, which are also very important for EU companies. It also has provisions regarding the movement of professionals for business purposes. This allows our companies to send to Mercosur managers or specialists that EU companies need in their subsidiaries in Mercosur countries. And this is also an important outcome. We have particular interests as far as trading services of maritime services, and this is also an area I would like to highlight because it does give EU operators important results. It gives them new market access, so this is now opening markets that were closed so far for EU companies. Mercosur are they commit to the current levels of openness for bulk transport on specific products. They also offer commitments on regional repositioning of containers, which is very important for trade. It allows also, when the provisions enter into force, regional feedering, which are at the core and at the center of EU requests in this area. And we have also obtained that Brazil committed to remove the lighthouse fees, which was adding costs to our operators. So, to make it even more concrete, thanks to the agreement with Mercosur, if it enters into force, our EU shipping companies established in Mercosur and which will be using ships that fly the flag of Mercosur countries will not be discriminated in the intra-Mercosur traffic in any kind. And this is an important outcome. The agreement also offers a platform for us to work with Mercosur partners in the area of e-commerce, which is increasingly important. And so, again, an important outcome that is part of this agreement. I will conclude by reiterating also that the agreement is making sure that the parties maintain the right to regulate. It reiterates the right to regulate, and that we will continue to decide in terms of how we decide to provide public services in the EU, as is the case also for our Mercosur partners. I will end here, and I look forward also to the discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I'll give the floor right now to Luisa Santos, Deputy Director General from Business Europe. Please.
Thank you very much, and thanks, Chair, for the invitation. My initial point is on the overall importance of this agreement, and then I'll focus a bit more on the service sector. So, of course, the business community of Europe is very much and very strongly backing the agreement. For first, geopolitical reasons. We see geopolitical risk increasing all over the world, including with traditional partners like the US. And we also see increasing competition from a key partner, a key trading partner like China. So we definitely need alternative markets, but we also need to secure more supplies, particularly of critical raw materials. So this region is very important for geopolitical reasons. It's also important because there is a potential to grow as market. It's a relatively closed market until today. Most of goods have 35% duty when we export to Mercosur. And I'm talking about the goods because a lot of these goods also are connected to services. When we export medical devices, we are not only exporting goods, we are also exporting services because most of them are also connected. And then the final point is it is an agreement that is important for SMEs, both in the area of goods but also in the area of services, because indeed the SMEs are the ones who are more concerned about difficult customs procedures, about bureaucracy, about difference in regulation. So the fact that the agreement also includes provisions, for instance, on regulatory cooperation is extremely important. So now focusing on the services. I think Jorge Vitorino already indicated how important the services are in our bilateral relationship. Around almost 35% of our total trade with Mercosur is related to services. And apart from the maritime transport that Jorge mentioned, we do have telecoms. We have, of course, also the financial sectors. These are all relatively important in the current trade picture between EU and Mercosur. I will mention just as a case Brazil. So over the last 12 years, European exports of services to Brazil have increased by 56%. This is just to show the importance of trade in this area for us and for the biggest economy in Mercosur, which is Brazil. But despite this growth of 56%, we still had a lot of barriers, such as residence requirements for professional services, limited commitments to cross-border trade in computer-related services, the so-called Mode 1, and complex regulations on financial services. The good news is that the agreement is addressing these points. Now, going back to what we see in the services and investment chapter in EU-Mercosur, Jorge went a bit further in the details, but I think it's important to say that overall it is a positive outcome because it goes further than the commitments that exist in the WTO. And, of course, including in important chapters of the new economy, like digital trade. It's not the most modern chapter. It's not the one that we are now, for instance, negotiating with Singapore, which just ended with Singapore. But we hope it is a starting point and that we can also deliver a bit further in this chapter. There's one important aspect. We have a moratorium on e-commerce, on the e-commerce transmissions, on the electronic transmissions, because this is an area that is very important for us to avoid that we have customs duties. And of course, it has provisions as well on forced data localization. So it is important as well because data today is fundamental for trade in goods and in services. Then I want to mention as well public procurement, because this is extremely important both for big companies but also for smaller companies. Particularly, everything has to do with public infrastructures. And we know this area, we have a lot of investments here, but also in other areas that relate to services, professional qualifications like engineering, architecture, and urban planning. 2/3 of all government provisions, of government procurement provisions relate directly to the services sector. So it's extremely important that we have a good deal here in this area, also for services, and we believe so. And the other aspects that are also important because they are connected to services on competition, on subsidies, on state-owned enterprises, on the protection of intellectual property. All these are fundamental as well for services, and we believe that the outcome is very good also here. So overall, we believe that for services, the agreement is good. We have more than what we have right now at the WTO. It is, as you said, President, a starting point. We want to build from here, but this is valid for all aspects of the agreement. And we believe that the benefits that we will have as well with the liberalization on goods will also be benefiting the services overall. So for us, definitely we need this agreement. We waited 26 years for it. Now is the time to deliver the ratification of EU-Mercosur. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And I'll give the floor to Madam Elena Cresta from ETUC, Senior Advisor on Trade. So please.
Thank you, and thank you for inviting the ETUC, also known as the contrarian voice on this agreement. Jokes aside, you'd be surprised that actually we have more questions than hard criticisms with regard to this particular chapter of the agreement. Obviously, we have devoted most of our attentions to other parts of the agreement. I think the ETUC position on the trade and sustainable development chapter is well known. Our main concern being the unenforceability of the labor clauses. So yes, there are commitments to respecting ILO conventions, but there are no sanctions linked to serious violations of fundamental workers' rights, which, according to the Commission's own impact assessment, are still present. And the impact assessment recommended to the Commission that the labor clauses be strengthened accordingly, and that didn't happen. We now await if and when the agreement comes into force. We are hopeful that the review clauses might offer opportunities to improve that chapter to meet at least partially our concerns. So as I said, that this was the main focus of our attention when it comes to this agreement. We maybe don't have a specific view on the service chapter, but we have long-standing positions on trade in services. And so I will be applying the reasonings to this agreement. And as I said at the outset, mostly in the form of questions. So we would welcome clarifications on the part of the Commission. And so this time, you will not hear me being too critical of this agreement. Makes a change, right? So just aside, we note that the Article 1 clearly excludes public services. That definitely meets our main demand when it comes to the trade in services. We insist that public services must remain universally accessible and provided in publicly provided. But therefore, we have questions on the inclusion of postal services, because those are indeed included. So although there is no obligation to further market opening, liberalization, we would like to understand better what's the scope when it comes to postal services. Traditionally, trade agreements have a very narrow formulation in the exclusion of public services. And so the second question we have is, how does this narrow definition evolve in time? How does it keep up with the changed realities on the ground, and whether there's any possibility of going back? Because in theory, in general, there isn't. So we'd welcome clarification on that. So we welcome the fact that social security and other education and healthcare and other, services that you think of when you think of public services are definitely excluded. So that is welcome. The second area linked to the exclusion of public services, obviously, is the right to regulate. Again, it is welcome that in Article 1 it is said that this agreement does not impede the right to regulate, does not restrict it. However, we have questions with the local presence requirement, because if no longer permitted, isn't there a danger that it restricts the ability of national authorities to carry out checks, for instance, about the compliance with other norms, notably labor law and other requirements? Obviously, we don't want European investors in Mercosur, but also vice versa, to be able to not comply fully with labor law or not comply fully with fiscal requirements or social security contributions, or indeed with data protection legislation. And since Luisa mentioned financial services, the other thing I wanted to add with regards to the right to regulate is the importance of regulating financial institutions that pose or may pose in the future systemic risk. Again, a clarification that is absolutely protected as a possibility for public authorities would be welcome. Luisa also touched on public procurement, which is very important. Obviously, a lot of public contracts relate indeed to the provision of services. Again, given that we are undertaking a review of the public procurement regulations in Europe, but that we also share some of the concerns of our sister unions in the region, we want to make sure that public contracts, when awarded, also contribute to the creation of quality jobs through social criteria. And so, again, nothing in this agreement should prevent the ability of local authorities at national or subnational level to require service providers complying with the public contract from, as I said, granting good working conditions and guaranteeing the creation of good jobs. We had circulated in the month of June a briefing to MEPs jointly with our sister unions, where we did highlight some of their concerns on the access to the sub-federal level of public contracts. Now, moving quickly to the e-commerce provisions. We welcome the fact that in the chapter, it is fairly clear that local taxes can still be applied, although we absolutely agree on the moratorium. Obviously, no one would want to start paying taxes on emails going back and forth. That would be simply unreasonable. But you also have to understand that for countries whose economies are still developing and countries who have the ambition of increasing and improving their economies, The ability to also raise revenues, tax revenues, is important, and we wouldn't want to prevent that. So we welcome that the chapter wouldn't impede taxes that obviously remain compatible with the commitments of the agreement. We have questions, and I'll wind up quickly because I see time running out. We have questions on the principles of no prior authorization. We want to understand whether that might restrict the competence of the parties to adopt regulatory measures, although we understand that measures adopted in the public interest would still be allowed, but good if that could be clarified. And again, the provisions on data flows, in our view, should not restrict the ability to monitor compliance with legislation. And my last point is on the mobility of professionals, which, again, for us, is very important to maintain the principle of equal pay for equal work of equal value. So same rights, no social dumping, and no reclassification of workers into service providers in order to have lower wages and fewer protections. Thank you.
So, thank you very much. So many points put on the table. So thanks a lot for all your contributions. And now I would like to give the floor to the ambassadors of the Mercosur countries being present here, in particular the ambassador of Brazil, the country that holds the presidency so far. So I'm sure you have to add a lot of additional points in order us having the whole picture. So please, the floor is yours.
Muito obrigado, senhora presidente. Vou falar em português, já que os dois usuários da língua portuguesa falaram em inglês, eu acho que, até por respeito aos tradutores e intérpretes, eu vou falar em português. Muito obrigado, senhora presidente, senhores parlamentares, muito obrigado por me dar a palavra. Agradecer, em primeiro lugar, que a senhora tenha organizado este momento de discussão sobre o capítulo de serviços do acordo. É importante que possamos ser capazes de falar de todos os temas do acordo. O meu segundo comentário é lembrar que este acordo foi construído com base nos princípios e nas regras da Organização Mundial do Comércio. E eu lembro isto porque, neste momento, é importante valorizar as regras multilaterais e que a União Europeia e o Mercosul o façam, uma sinalização importante. Eu fui negociador deste acordo quando nós concluímos a parte de serviços, mas há muito tempo que eu não tratava do tema. Então, hoje eu li novamente o acordo e eu escutei com atenção os comentários dos panelistas de hoje e queria compartilhar com a senhora só algumas palavras que chamaram minha atenção na leitura completa do capítulo de serviços, porque elas se repetem. As palavras são transparência, previsibilidade, diálogo, proteção do consumidor, direito a regular, e também se repetem as referências às reservas para temas mais sensíveis e estratégicos para o desenvolvimento, seja dos países do Mercosul, seja para a União Europeia. A senhora Luísa Santos falou com uma ideia que chamou minha atenção também, que muitas vezes é esquecida, é que quando nós falamos de serviços, nós temos que pensar também em serviços como uma espécie de complemento ou instrumento adicional aos demais temas do acordo. Comércio de bens, propriedade intelectual, compras governamentais. Os serviços, na verdade, às vezes estão embutidos nas demais formas e valorizam as demais formas de fazer comércio. E é evidente que este capítulo de serviços, ele Ele vai facilitar a criação de novas cadeias de valor e facilitar as trocas e os investimentos entre as duas partes. Eu fico feliz que os colegas europeus tenham reconhecido as concessões feitas pelo Mercosul, concessões, por vezes, em temas muito sensíveis para nós e que foram concessões que fizemos pela primeira vez. É o caso que foi referido aqui dos transportes marítimos. E eu terminaria, senhora presidente, lembrando um tema que eu sempre lembro, que é a questão do processo de consultas, que foi referido pela senhora presidente e pela representante das organizações dos trabalhadores. No lado do Mercosul, nós fizemos o processo de consultas, mais de uma vez, seja para o acordo que foi, a parte do acordo que concluiu em 2019, seja que concluiu em 2023. Então, quero assegurar que os setores interessados, inclusive as organizações dos trabalhadores, foram certamente plenamente consultados. E sobre os pontos que a representante dos trabalhadores mencionou aqui, eu quero só assegurar a ela que os negociadores do Mercosul eram muito competentes e levaram em consideração todos os pontos sensíveis que ela mencionou, como sendo importantes para nossos países. E, evidentemente, como ponto final, eu lembraria que o presidente da República, o presidente Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, ele é um representante histórico e fundamental do movimento dos trabalhadores, tendo estado na origem da defesa dos direitos dos trabalhadores no meu país e, como a senhora compreenderá, ele certamente não apoiaria um acordo que de qualquer maneira fosse contra os interesses dos nossos trabalhadores. Muito obrigado.
Thank you very much for making the picture round. So maybe if somebody else from the representatives from the Mercosur embassies would like to raise the voice, I'm pleased to give the floor. If this is not the case, or maybe just reacting a little bit later, I would like to give the floor to the members of the European Parliament. First of all, I say thank you very much to all of you for presenting the perspectives. So please, Mr. Mato, I give the floor as being the one who is knowing best of all of us what's being dealt with in. Please.
Thank you very much. Muchas gracias. I speak in Spanish. We have interpreters. So, muchísimas gracias, Presidenta, y un saludo a los embajadores de los países Mercosur. Yo voy a estar muy breve porque yo creo que han quedado perfectamente de manifiesto las bondades de este acuerdo en el aspecto de servicios, sin lugar a dudas. Y yo lamento el que, pues un debate como este en el que precisamente se pueden aclarar muchas de las dudas de que tienen los detractores, ¿no?, que se llenan la boca contra este acuerdo, pero a la hora de venir a debatir, a informarse, a conocer de cerca cuáles son los planteamientos, pues no vienen. Yo lo lamento en esta delegación Mercosur, pero también me pasa a mí en los working group. Vienen los embajadores, yo agradezco, pero los diputados no. Eso dice muy poco en favor de ellos. Pero también reconozco que, así como son muy activos los detractores del acuerdo, son poco activos los defensores del mismo. Yo creo que quienes, como por ejemplo el sector servicio en lo más amplio sentido de la palabra, que dicen claramente todos que el acuerdo es bueno, pues a mí me gustaría que hicieran mucho más en ese sentido, y por eso también creo que la Comisión tiene que hacer una gran labor de pedagogía para explicar bien lo que es el acuerdo y lo bueno que al final es el acuerdo, porque es verdad que genera preocupaciones, es verdad que hay sectores en concreto que lo temen, pero también es verdad que el propio acuerdo contempla muchas cuestiones, muchas salvaguardas, contingentes, cupos, red de defensa, que hace que esas preocupaciones, pues muy bueno, yo creo que no tengan tanto nivel de preocupación, porque al final no están. Y yo agradezco mucho especialmente la voz de la representante de la Confederación Europea de Sindicatos. Y además me alegra mucho que haya dicho claramente que en este caso no va a ser una voz contraria, sino va a plantear más que críticas, interrogantes. Y yo lo que espero es que efectivamente todas esas interrogantes que plantean con muy buen criterio sean explicadas y sean analizadas, porque es verdad que ha puesto en manifiesto muchos elementos positivos y yo creo sinceramente que sus preocupaciones en relación con los trabajadores las ha definido muy bien el propio embajador de Brasil, ¿no? Ha hecho que el mayor interesado para que eso no suceda, es decir, que haya ningún tipo de discriminación o de perjuicio para los trabajadores, es del propio presidente de Brasil. Con lo cual, con esa respuesta me quedo y yo le agradezco mucho a la presidenta este debate como a todos los que han intervenido.
Thank you very much. And I give the floor to Esther Herranz García, please.
Oh, thank you, Chair. I will speak in Spanish as well. Realmente, primero es mi primera intervención en Mercosur como miembro de esta delegación y estoy muy agradecida a mi delegación y a mi grupo político por darme la oportunidad de estar aquí una vez de full member, porque realmente llevo muchos años intentándolo. He de decir que la historia de este acuerdo de Mercosur es coetánea con mi llegada al Parlamento allí por principios del 2000, el 2002. Y este acuerdo es una satisfacción después de tanto tiempo, porque le he visto evolucionar en muchos años, durante muchos años como diputada, y siempre he sido de las más reacias a él desde el punto de vista agrícola. Y sin embargo, en esta ocasión tengo que decir que estoy satisfecha con el acuerdo. Quiero dar las gracias a los negociadores por haber tenido en cuenta cosas tan importantes como la propiedad intelectual en un campo con el que yo me muevo, que es el campo del sector primario y la industria agroalimentaria. Es de especialmente agradecer que se haya tenido en cuenta la propiedad intelectual, las denominaciones de origen, indicaciones geográficas, en fin. En cuanto a lo que se ha expuesto hoy del tema de los servicios, es también una oportunidad muy grande para ambas partes, tanto para Mercosur como para la Unión Europea, el poder establecer ese lazo de unión. Igual que mi colega Gabriel Mato, lamento profundamente que hoy no estén aquí quienes son ampliamente detractores de este acuerdo, que, como digo, para mí es una de las cosas que llega en un momento, además, muy necesario para todas las partes en el momento geopolítico que nos encontramos. Nos da la posibilidad de estrechar lazos entre Europa y América Latina, que siempre es una muy buena noticia, y nos da la posibilidad de situarnos correctamente en el marco del damero internacional. Hubiera sido una buena cosa que hubieran estado los colegas para expresar cuáles son las dudas que tienen al respecto. La única pega que yo le veo a este acuerdo, sinceramente, así lo siento, es que cómo podríamos asegurarnos de que las cláusulas de salvaguarda que a los sectores más implicados o más concernidos en el acuerdo pueden preocupar, como digo, conseguimos que las instituciones europeas puedan asegurar las cláusulas de salvaguarda que tanto preocupan. En este sentido, creo que podremos trabajar en un futuro para que algunos sectores, como por ejemplo los productores de carne o de pollo, que están tan preocupados, puedan tener una garantía a través de organismos que ya tenemos, como por ejemplo la EFSA. Así pues, espero que esto se pueda someter pronto a votación y sea una cosa muy favorable para ambas partes. Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, and I'll give the floor to Bruno Gonçalves, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'll speak in Portuguese. Fazer a oportunidade das poucas vezes que podemos falar português, com a maior parte dos intervenientes a perceberem a língua, e começar por agradecer naturalmente a convocatória desta reunião. Eu acho que o processo político está bem adiantado e, portanto, independentemente daquilo que são vozes mais ou menos discordantes neste Parlamento, essas vozes que são uma minoria não serão significativas para a rejeição deste acordo e, portanto, parece-me que os últimos meses têm sido muito benéficos nesse ponto de vista. Acho que o facto do Brasil assumir essa presidência neste momento com um timeline muito apertado significará aquilo que o Presidente da República Brasileira disse no início do mandato da Mercosul como o fechamento, a conclusão de um processo que ele próprio queria concluir enquanto Presidente da Mercosul e, portanto, eu espero que, na bondade de parceiros que somos entre a União Europeia e Brasil, possamos finalizá-lo até ao final do ano. E eu acho que muitas das cláusulas que eram e que ainda são hoje em alguns países problemáticas, são problemáticas porque a informação não chega às pessoas, tanto no capítulo da agricultura como no capítulo da pecuária. Mas eu gostava, uma vez que estamos aqui a falar de serviços, provavelmente deixar aos dois uma reflexão e uma pergunta, porque eu acho que há muitas vezes por parte do mercado europeu um desconhecimento profundo daquilo que são as novas tendências mundiais e as novas tendências da indústria e do setor dos serviços, do Mercosul em particular, de alguns países da América Latina, nomeadamente do Brasil. E há, neste momento, quer dizer, este será assinado o principal acordo de comércio a nível global, e nós sabemos ainda assim que no setor dos serviços, os serviços financeiros continuam a representar hoje a grande fatia de capital e de movimentação de capital a nível global. E aqui nós temos tão boas experiências na Europa como temos boas experiências no capítulo da Mercosul, sobretudo na parte das fintech. A União Europeia quer tentar ou quer avançar durante este mandato com o Capital Markets Union, portanto com a unificação do seu mercado de capitais, em justa medida também para prevenir o aparecimento de ferramentas digitais como destas fintech que possam ameaçar de alguma forma o consumidor ou alguns direitos do consumidor no capítulo financeiro. E a minha pergunta é, seja do ponto de vista do acordo, o que é que está previsto para a fintech em termos de partilha de dados, em termos de partilha de consumidores e produtos financeiros? Porque nós não conseguimos avançar com uma harmonização a nível europeu. Sabemos que a expansão deste acordo, um acordo de comércio livre que possa prever não um capítulo puramente financeiro, mas na área das fintechs, alavancaria o mercado de consumidores e também alavancaria a capacidade de nós podermos formular novos capitais e já agora um novo capital de risco que possa financiar as nossas economias no futuro. E eu menciono isto em particular porque se nós olharmos para fintechs, o Brasil tem um grande exemplo de um banco que se posicionou nesta área, que é um dos principais líderes a nível mundial, e isso significa que juntamente com a nossa economia europeia nós podemos não só aproveitar o capital de conhecimento que vem do outro lado do Atlântico, mas aumentar a nossa escala de risco, a nossa escala de investimento, e isto cruza tudo com aquilo que nós temos hoje em termos de investimento em nanotecnologia, inteligência artificial, cloud e, portanto, economia do futuro com financiamento do futuro. E, em último lugar, dizer que me associa a algumas preocupações da ETUC, nomeadamente no que toca a social dumping. Este é um acordo que tem de avançar, é um acordo que tem de avançar rápido, mas nós não podemos deixar de excluir que outros acordos que temos vigentes hoje são eles também ameaçados pelas próprias práticas indevidas, não contempladas pelos acordos, mas sobretudo porque do ponto de vista prático muitas vezes acabaram as indústrias europeias por deslocalizar aquilo que era a produção na Europa para a produção noutras áreas. Isto não acontece só na indústria, nem só no setor primário, acontece também no setor de serviços, onde a Europa é claramente insuficiente, nomeadamente no digital. E, portanto, deixar esta preocupação não apenas àquilo que são as relações laborais do presente, à flexibilização ou não dos contratos de trabalho, ao uso indevido de recibos verdes, mas, sobretudo, na análise daquilo que são os novos mercados laborais, novos contratos laborais, e como é que esta flexibilidade entre onde opera um trabalhador e onde o seu rendimento é maioritariamente produzido ou tributado pode ser afetado por um acordo, que é um acordo, repito mais uma vez, o maior acordo que podemos assinar em termos de comércio livre global. Muito obrigado.
So thank you very much. I will give back the floor to our invited experts right now, picking those questions being addressed to them. So starting with the European Commission, who usually always gets most of it. So please.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed, and thank you for the questions. I would start by indeed highlighting or underlining the fact that many of these issues have indeed been looked at during the negotiations when we have also throughout the whole process engaged regularly with stakeholders, also with the European Parliament, with member states in particular, where many of these issues that have been raised have been addressed and have been discussed and actually have been taken into account in the outcome of the negotiations, precisely because we wanted to give this clear message that we can find in the agreement about the right to regulate, to respect for applicable legislations, core labor standards, etc. And this is something that you will find indeed in the agreement. The agreement contains a chapter on trade and sustainable development, which is strong. It is legally binding. and it is enforceable. And it includes provisions, and I want to also, with this, answer a number of the comments that were made regarding the danger of lowering standards in particular areas. The provisions included in the agreement address commitments not to weaken, not to waive, not to fail to enforce labor law, for example, with the intention of encouraging trade and investment. And so each party is now committed, will be committed if the agreement enters into force, to respect, promote, and effectively implement the core labor standards as defined in the fundamental ILO conventions. And if there is disagreement, we have means to address that. There's a process of cooperation. We think that the process of cooperation can actually yield results. We have seen it with other partners, for example, with South Korea, with Peru and Colombia. But if there is still disagreement, we can resort to procedures for dispute settlement. And so there is, I think, all the means for us to engage with our partners in this result. And we should not forget that this has been a long road to get to this. Now we take for granted that, of course, the trade agreement with Mercosur has to have a trade and sustainable development chapter. But just the other day, listening also to a discussion that the ambassador had with our chief negotiator of this agreement, we were reminded that in the beginning of negotiations, it was not granted that Mercosur countries would accept even to have a chapter on trade and sustainable development. And so I think it's very important. It's a very good basis for us to work with our partners to improve. But I take the point that the commitments are only good as much as they are implemented. And so this will be, of course, the work that we will have to do, and we will do that with our stakeholders, with member states, with this parliament, precisely to work on implementation of the commitments that are there. I wanted also to address the issues that were raised with regard to local presence, the commitments there. They do cater for the reservations that we have in our EU law, so it does not regulate, the agreement does not regulate labor markets or social security, and it does have the reiteration of the right to regulate as long as this is done in a non-discriminatory manner. And this is also something that in the EU we do and we are committed to do. The agreement does not define what is an universal service in the case of postal services in particular. So what we are committing there is in a very limited manner for express courier in particular, and it does not have commitments on universal services in particular. It does also not include, indeed, provisions on data flows. This is something that ETUC in particular will not find a problem with, and including in commitments that we have with regard to the mobility of professionals. This is, of course, done within the rules that we have in the EU, the legislation we have in the EU. Likewise, we have listened to the concerns expressed before, but as far as the commitments on financial services, they also cater for what we usually call a prudential carve-out, and therefore allow parties to ensure the integrity and the stability of each of the parties' financial system. So measures in this regard are also possible. Specifically on fintech, we don't have specific commitments in that regard, but we do have commitments that also apply and benefit fintech work, and it offers a good basis for us to work with our partners precisely in further areas. But there are commitments on non-discrimination, transparency, which will be important also in that area. But again, something that we will need to work with our partners to ensure then the implementation of the whole agreement, and also to benefit from the implementation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I'd like to give the floor to Madame Santos, please.
Thank you. I think we should not see, because this agreement was negotiated over so many years, it's very clear that in some of the areas, if we were starting from today, we might have gone even further. But we have not. So it's very clear that we will have to do a lot to try to complement some of the points that we might want to be, where we might want it to be a bit more ambitious. On the sustainable development, and we had this it's a long discussion that we have with E2C and with other actors. I think we have a monitoring group of the civil society, as we have in all trade agreements, that will ensure that if there are indeed breaches of sustainability and the Sustainable Development chapter, this will be addressed. I also think that in the current situation, this agreement has very strong commitments, for instance, in the area of deforestation or in the area of climate change and commitments to the Paris Agreement. So it is in many senses a very ambitious chapter as compared to what we have in other agreements. So I think we need to build on that. That's one point. On the other aspects that relate to procurement, of course, there's always a balance to be made between, and we are having that discussion now in Europe, about the preference, local preference or domestic preference, and the ability to open the market to foreign competition. And we need to make a good balance. But I think here we can discuss, because we are also discussing internally among European business, where should the line be drawn between supporting local industry and allowing for competition. But what we should not do is continue to have markets that are completely closed to foreign competition, because this is not good. And talking about services, clearly not an area where I think it is in our interests, either Europe or Brazil, to close the market, because I think we have a lot to win of opening up and trying to use what the other does best to also improve our competitive advantages. I also think this is valid for financial services, where we see many trying to go more and more solo and also avoiding any sort of multilateral agreements or cooperation. So I also think here we have an interest in trying to get closer between Europe and Mercosur and eventually trying to align legislation, because I think it is important. But we need to do this agreement to start doing it. So I think here it's also an area where we have a lot to do together. Thanks.
Thank you very much for your answers. And finally, Madame Cresta, please.
I think there was only one point addressed to me on the risk of outsourcing workers. Our understanding is that there is no addendum to this agreement that actually facilitates relocation, unlike in the Mexico agreement. So that's good news. But as I said, I think fundamental rights of work ought to be respected, regardless of where the company has its seat or its operations. And so I don't think we have a problem with the opportunities that are created by businesses opening up in new markets, provided that there's a level playing field and that this opening in new markets is not used to undercut workers in other regions. That I think is the main tenet of our position. And it's not that unreasonable, because we are only demanding the respect of ILO conventions. We're not exporting European directives or European standards. That would probably be unreasonable, and we accept that. So what we ask for is for a level playing field. And just allow me to comment on the point raised by the ambassador. Yes, I'm not going to comment on the political allegiance of the Brazilian trade union movement, nor of the what party the president hails from. But our joint briefing was co-signed by the Coordinadora de Centrales Sindicales del Cono Sur, and that includes CUT Brazil. And they accepted that what we needed was also sanctions attached to the TSD chapter. And we do not have sanctions attached to the TSD chapter. That's a fact. In future, we will see where we go. But that does not prevent us from cooperating and working together and mutually supporting each other on capacity building and on effective implementation of fundamental labor rights.
Thank you so much. Thanks to all of you for your contributions. of great value as we are going to have our mission to Uruguay and Paraguay. So somehow these points are also of importance. We'll take them on board for our direct work there. So thanks to everybody. With this, I would like to finish this point of the agenda and thank to all the participants contributing right now. So thanks to you. We come to number 5 on our agenda. Item 5 is the point on new government of Yamandu Orsi in Uruguay. Today we'll exchange views on the situation in Uruguay and the policies of the new government of the Uruguayan President Orsi. So not so new now, since the new government took already office 6 months ago, but for us, so far still new enough. In effect, on the 1st of March 25, President Orsi and his government was sworn in following the elections that took place on the 27th October 24 and 24th November 24, so the second round of the presidential elections then. So these elections brought about to return to power of the broad front, Frente Amplio in Spanish, after 5 years of center-right government. Therefore, debate on these topics was long due, but it was not possible to organize until now. So in any case, today's exchange of views on Uruguay is timely, since this delegation will be on a mission to Uruguay and Paraguay, as I mentioned it already a couple of times today, at the end of October. I can confirm that this delegation is pleased to have the opportunity to see in person the situation in these countries and exchange views with different partners there. So we proceed without further ado to give the floor to our guests, Pablo Emilio Sader Hernandez, Ambassador of Uruguay to the European Union, and Ariana Vasquez Garrido, Head of the South America Division in European External Action Service. So I would like to ask the speakers to be respectful to the given time. I think we can have a nice exchange, so somehow I'm looking very much forward to your contributions before having the exchange with us, members of the European Parliament. So I'll give the floor to the Ambassador, Mr. Emilio Sader Hernandez. So please, welcome, the floor is yours.
Muchas gracias, señora Presidente, y muchas gracias por invitarme. Es un placer dirigirme a esta sala que no está precisamente llena, pero sí es una presencia muy calificada y con muchas caras amigas. Me voy a referir, como reza el quinto punto de la agenda, al nuevo gobierno del presidente Orsi, y voy a ir de mayor a menor. Este año Uruguay celebra 200 años de vida independiente. Son 2 siglos de una buena historia, de la cual me siento bastante orgulloso, con un recorrido que, como toda experiencia humana, no ha sido lineal, pero hay sí una constancia que nos define, un norte al cual siempre volvimos, que es la vigencia de la democracia, las instituciones republicanas y de un pacto social no escrito, de convivencia cívica, que forma parte de nuestra identidad nacional. Haber visto interrumpida esa democracia y esa convivencia durante 12 años nos hace hoy cada vez más valorarlas, cuidarlas y promoverlas. Desde el retorno democrático en 1985, mi país ha vivido 9 gobiernos con una alternancia armónica de 3 partidos políticos de distinta orientación, y esa normalidad institucional que se basa en el respeto y trabajar junto al que piensa distinto para llegar a acuerdos nos ha permitido consolidar políticas de Estado y proyectarnos al mundo con credibilidad. El gobierno del presidente Orsi asumió el pasado 1 de marzo, luego del proceso electoral habitual, normal y transparente, seguido de una transición ordenada que honra esa madurez institucional a que me refería. En su discurso, cuando asumió, el presidente señaló con una claridad republicana que su gestión no busca refundar, sino consolidar avances e impulsar nuevas propuestas. Antes de ayer en las Naciones Unidas repitió conceptos muy similares. La agenda del gobierno para su gestión está definida en torno a prioridades claras, un crecimiento económico con empleo de calidad, apoyando de manera especial a las pequeñas y medianas empresas, fomentando la innovación tecnológica y favoreciendo la inserción de los jóvenes en el mercado laboral. La seguridad ciudadana, concebida con un enfoque integral que combina la prevención, el fortalecimiento de la capacidad policial y la reinserción social. En tercer lugar, la reducción de desigualdades, ampliando el acceso a la salud y de la vivienda digna, por ejemplo. Luego, la educación como base de igualdad de oportunidades, con la modernización de la formación docente y un renovado impulso a las ciencias y la tecnología. Y todo esto dentro de un marco de estabilidad fiscal responsable, como refleja el proyecto de ley del presupuesto que se elevó el mes pasado, que ofrece confianza a los inversores y trata de asegurar un desarrollo inclusivo y sostenible. Y sobre esa base interna, señora Presidente, se proyecta nuestra acción externa con una política exterior para el quinquenio 2025-2030 concebida como una política de Estado, fundado en el diálogo democrático y en la defensa del interés nacional. En primer lugar, asumimos una vocación global, una política exterior abierta, comprometida con el multilateralismo, con la vigencia de las normas internacionales y con una inserción activa en los grandes debates de nuestro tiempo, desde la paz y la seguridad hasta el desarrollo sostenible y la gobernanza digital. Hay un renovado énfasis en nuestra región. Uruguay asumirá responsabilidades de primer orden, la coordinación del Consenso de Brasilia desde hace unas semanas, la presidencia de la CELAC en 2026 y las presidencias temporales del Mercosur en 2026 y 2028. Son instancias que confirman la vocación del país por el diálogo, la convergencia y la construcción de consensos en un mundo fragmentado. El Mercosur sigue siendo nuestro marco natural de integración e inserción en el mundo. Su modernización interna y su apertura externa son prioritarias para nosotros. Aquí quiero decir que el Mercosur ha dado pasos importantes en la firma del acuerdo con Singapur y mantiene negociaciones activas con Canadá, Emiratos, India y otros socios. Hace unos días, en Río, firmamos el acuerdo Mercosur-EFTA, que abrirá nuevas puertas en la Europa no comunitaria. La relación con la Unión Europea es, para Uruguay, una asociación estratégica que combina lazos históricos, valores compartidos y una dimensión económica muy significativa. En este marco, en octubre, el presidente Orsi va a visitar Bruselas, lo que va a ser una ocasión ideal para reafirmar al más alto nivel esta visión común de asociación. Quiero referirme brevemente a dos hitos que marcan este año. Primero, la cumbre CELAC Unión Europea de Santa Marta, que debe fortalecer el diálogo y la asociación birregional en un mundo cada vez más incierto. En segundo lugar, quiero subrayar la posibilidad histórica de culminar un proceso de 25 años con la firme ratificación del acuerdo Mercosur-Unión Europea, que claramente no se trata de un acuerdo comercial simple que sin duda va a beneficiar a ambas partes, pero que es sobre todo una apuesta estratégica por el desarrollo sostenible, el empleo de calidad y la estabilidad global. Como usted dijo, un political tool y un starting point de una nueva relación. Este acuerdo está llamado a ser un verdadero punto de inflexión en la relación birregional y al mismo tiempo un mensaje al mundo en esta coyuntura internacional tan particular. Una señal clara de compromiso con la cooperación, con el multilateralismo y con un comercio abierto sujeto a reglas. Me parece apropiado decir esto en esta casa, el Parlamento Europeo, que tiene un papel decisivo en su entrada en vigor. Con todo respeto, me parece que amerita que la consideremos en toda su trascendencia estratégica, mirando el bosque y no quedándonos atrapados en unos pocos árboles que no nos gustan. Vemos claramente que las críticas al acuerdo se han centrado en los temas de agricultura y medio ambiente. Sin embargo, lo preocupante es que se ha instalado una narrativa que no se condice con la realidad de nuestra producción agrícola, ni ambiental, ni en el Mercosur en general, ni en Uruguay en particular. Por eso creemos fundamental dar esta discusión con seriedad y con equilibrio, escuchando a todos sobre la base de hechos y no de percepciones distorsionadas. En Uruguay producimos de manera eficiente alimentos de alta calidad e inocuidad, apoyados en nuestras ventajas naturales como nuestros socios. La sustentabilidad productiva no es un discurso, es parte de nuestra identidad nacional. Décadas atrás, adoptamos prácticas que hoy coinciden con políticas que acaba de adoptar la Unión Europea, como el Farm to Fork o la EUDR. La rotación de cultivos, el uso regulado de insumos, la preservación del bosque nativo, la preservación y incremento del bosque nativo, la prohibición de hormonas para engorde y antibióticos con fines promotores de crecimiento, junto con la trazabilidad ganadera universal, pionera en el mundo. Nuestro ganado se cría naturalmente en libertad, alimentado en pasturas que están entre las mejores del mundo, con un compromiso genuino y permanente con el bienestar animal, que es parte esencial de nuestras prácticas productivas y de nuestra identidad como país. Del mismo modo, tampoco quiero dejar de destacar que Uruguay cuenta con una matriz energética renovable superior al 97%, que nos coloca entre los líderes en el mundo. Esto demuestra que para nosotros la llamada transición verde no es un objetivo pendiente, sino una realidad. Y sobre esa base avanzamos hacia una segunda etapa incorporando fuentes alternativas como el hidrógeno verde y los combustibles renovables. Una tercera área fue mencionada más temprano por nuestra colega de la Confederación de Sindicatos, que lamento que no esté más en la sala, y que se refería a la protección de los derechos de los trabajadores. Hablo de Uruguay acá, pero esto creo que se extiende a todos los socios. Nuestros estándares no son los europeos, son los uruguayos, pero no creo que les vayamos en saga a ningún país en Europa. Uruguay ha firmado prácticamente la totalidad, menos uno, de los convenios de la OIT, y no solo firmado, sino que los cumplimos. Y tenemos también una legislación doméstica laboral de avanzada que no tiene nada que envidiar a Europa. Finalmente, señora presidenta, la diplomacia parlamentaria es esencial en estos procesos y por eso nos alegramos mucho de su anuncio y nos alegramos que en octubre ustedes, encabezando una delegación del DEMER, nos visite nuevamente en Montevideo y también Asunción. Va a ser una excelente ocasión para que conozcan de primera mano nuestras realidades y las del Mercosur y para avanzar en esta agenda que une a nuestras dos regiones, y desde ya sepa que van a ser muy bienvenidos. Permítame cerrar agradeciéndole una vez más y a todos los miembros de esta delegación esta invitación a este ámbito, a hablar en este ámbito donde Uruguay se siente entre amigos y con plena confianza en el valor del diálogo. Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much for this presentation, which I say it right now, everything else but diplomatically sounds like music in my ears. And if it wasn't about having a huge Atlantic between the continents, I would say, okay, I think you would fulfill the Copenhagen criteria, I think, quicker than so many others. So I think there is the best basis for a good friendship between the European Union and Uruguay. So thank you very much for giving an overview on the state of play after the new government started the work. So maybe Mr. Mato would like to have a question. Otherwise, I would follow then too. So please.
No, gracias, Presidenta. No tanto para hacer ningún tipo de pregunta, porque creo que ha quedado muy claro todo. Y la Presidenta lo ha expresado muy bien, ¿no? Con lo de que es música para sus oídos. Para mí también. No sé si tenemos los mismos gustos musicales, pero en todo caso sí creo que ha sido muy interesante escuchar al embajador y yo se lo agradezco en todos los ámbitos. Desde luego, el análisis que ha hecho de Mercosur es muy claro. Yo saben que soy un firme defensor de este acuerdo porque creo en sus bondades y especialmente en estos momentos, y Uruguay desde luego ha sido una parte importante de él. Y luego también la alusión a algo que ha hecho, que también yo considero que tiene una importancia vital, que es la próxima cumbre Unión Europea-CELAC en diciembre en Santa Marta, una oportunidad sin lugar a dudas tremenda para seguir estrechando esos lazos birregionales que tenemos y en la que, dentro de esa diplomacia parlamentaria a la que aludía también, espero que el Parlamento Europeo esté invitado a participar y, desde luego, nosotros vamos a hacer nuestra contribución, en todo caso, como lo hacemos habitualmente, porque confiamos plenamente en esa diplomacia parlamentaria a la que se refería. Y yo, personalmente, pues también tengo el gusto y el honor de poder participar, si Dios quiere, en esa misión a Uruguay y Paraguay que tendremos el próximo mes de octubre. Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, Gabriel. I was so overwhelmed by the a presentation of the ambassador that went directly to the questions session. But of course, we are very much looking forward to Adriana Vázquez Garrido's presentation. Of course, also to see the other part of the side, what the EEA is contributing in order to the changes. So please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, honourable members of Parliament, Ambassador. It is a pleasure to be here today to discuss Uruguay and to compliment on the presentation that the Ambassador has already very eloquently made including on our bilateral relationship. Uruguay is a key partner for the EU. Our long-standing relationship is based on shared values and respect for human rights, for the rule of law and for democracy. We appreciate Uruguay's long democratic tradition and the peaceful alternation of power, which the ambassador has already referred to, that results also in a continuity on many of the key political topics that are of common interest. Allow me here to congratulate Uruguay on that 200th anniversary of its independence. We share the commitment to multilateralism and to the rule-based international world order, which is particularly important in the current context where those values are increasingly put into question. We are strong allies in the fight against climate change. Again, the ambassador has already referred to that remarkable performance of Uruguay with a 98% of renewable energy mix of its electrical matrix. Uruguay and the EU also signed a memorandum of understanding on energy cooperation in July 2023, which has allowed us to deepen a partnership on energy issues, resulting in a regular high-level dialogue on energy between the EU and Uruguay. We appreciate Uruguay's recent joining the Global Energy Transition Forum to encourage engagement for fair and equitable energy transition. The commitment to fight climate change and strong environmental standards also unite us and will be of the utmost importance in the run-up to the COP30 that will take place in November in Belém, where we share many of Uruguay's priorities. The EU is committed to deepening our relationship in all areas of mutual interest, in addition to the ones I've already mentioned. I think there's a focus, we share a focus on renewable hydrogen, sustainable transport, digital transition, and security matters. Allow me now to also refer to the item that was on the agenda of this delegation's agenda just before, the EU-Mercosur Partnership Agreement, where I would like to thank Uruguay for the very constructive role that they played throughout the negotiations. Goes without saying that we fully share the desire of our Mercosur partners to see this agreement signed and applied as soon as possible. And to that end, we hope to receive in due course the support of this delegation. In addition to all the opportunities in terms of deepening political, sectoral cooperation and enhanced trade opportunities, the agreement would also improve investment opportunities. Uruguay hosts already a very high percentage of foreign direct investment originating in the EU. Its stable and predictable investment climate is conducive to further investment that, as I just said, the agreement, the EU-Mercosur Partnership Agreement, will further facilitate. Allow me to turn now to regional and other foreign policy issues. We value Uruguay's commitment to regional integration and enhanced cooperation, which will be very important in the run-up to the EU-CELAC summit in November this year. The EU attaches great importance to regional and region-to-region cooperation, despite ideological differences that may sound differences in approach. We're aware of the complexity that a process that brings together so many countries of different backgrounds and with different governments entails. And here is where the role of countries like Uruguay as honest brokers acquire a particularly relevant dimension. The additional momentum for this will, of course, materialize when Uruguay holds simultaneously the presidencies of CELAC and Mercosur in the second half of 2026. We also appreciate particularly Uruguay's continued condemnation of Russia's war of aggression against Ukraine. And in this context, allow me, Ambassador, to quote your president in something in his speech at UNGA this week, when he said something that I think we can all relate to, and it's that all wars are criminal, regardless of course. In our common endeavor for peace, Uruguay's long-standing contribution to the peacekeeping missions is remarkable, and as the second contributor in the world to these type of missions. President Olsi will hopefully visit Brussels later next month, and this, we hope, will be an opportunity to deepen our fruitful cooperation based on the shared priorities and continue joining forces for peace. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your very informative, comprehensive input. Thanks a lot. I just have a question to both of you. In addition to all the things we have been already debating, you, Ambassador, you mentioned also safety and security as one issue, more police, as I listen to you. I'd be interested in hearing a little bit more of that, as it, of course, when we are referring to the Mercosur agreement, in the political part, cooperation, especially on security issues, is an issue. So if you would like to add something, and I would like to raise the same question to Madame Vázquez Garrido. So the importance of specifically cooperating in security issues, be it, I don't know, money laundering, be it drug dealing stuff. So somehow I think there is a lot of stuff where also beyond the Mercosur agreement there could be an in-depth cooperation, but you mentioned it specifically. Please.
Muchas gracias, Presidenta. Sí, su pregunta es particularmente pertinente. Y también me voy a referir al discurso del presidente Orsi en la Asamblea General de la ONU. Él dijo que el narcotráfico y el crimen organizado son demasiado poderosos para enfrentar los divididos. Dijo que Uruguay pasó de ser un país de tránsito a uno de acopio y consumo elevado, y mencionó expresamente a Europa como un socio clave en la cooperación internacional para enfrentar el desafío. Nosotros estamos participando activamente en programas de cooperación birregional como el Pacto, que articula la acción policial, judicial y penitenciaria, y en Copolad 3, que celebramos que se haya extendido su vigencia, que apoya políticas de drogas basadas en salud y derechos humanos. Y de vuelta, la visión de nuestro país es clara: el narcotráfico no se combate solo, sino mediante instituciones sólidas y una acción conjunta, en este caso con Europa, que somos dos caras de la misma moneda del problema. Gracias.
Thank you very much, Madame Vázquez.
Muchas gracias, señora presidenta. Seré muy breve, puesto que el embajador ya ha dicho lo principal y suscribo lo que ha dicho. Simplemente subrayar también la prioridad que desde el lado de la Unión Europea otorgamos a esa cooperación en la lucha contra el crimen organizado y en temas de todo lo que está relacionado con la seguridad del ciudadano, en último lugar. En este contexto, tan solo mencionar a título informativo que uno de los objetivos conjuntos es que uno de los resultados de la cumbre Unión Europea-CELAC sea precisamente una iniciativa conjunta entre ambas regiones en materia de seguridad ciudadana y estamos activamente trabajando para llevarla a buen puerto. Nada más, gracias.
Thank you very much for your answers. Thank you very much for your presentations. We'll come to the end of the meeting because we are about to visit also, as I already mentioned, Uruguay and Paraguay. And therefore, at the end of the meeting, which will be right now, I invite everybody that is included, so the members, so the assistants, to stay here in the room as we have an information session. But thank you very much to all of those participating so far. And I would like to conclude the meeting. Any other business? If there is not any other business, we just can say that the date of the next meeting will be announced by the secretariats. So we don't have so far an exact date. And thanks to everybody who contributed to our exchanges. Thanks to the interpreters and all the others who will not participate right now in this in-camera meeting on our mission to Paraguay and Uruguay. I kindly ask to slowly leave the room as we are continuing in a moment. So I declare this sitting to be closed and we'll just catch up with the in-camera meeting in 5 minutes.